Thank you all for being here. It's a nice turnout before what's supposed to be a windy night ahead of us. My name is Nick Atzelos. I'm the Precinct 4 Town Councilor. If you don't know where Precinct 4 is, it's Route 28, south of 28. So pretty much all of Centerville south of 28 from Strawberry Hill Road roughly over to Five Corners, although I think I've lost that recently. I think that did some restructuring there. But at any rate, yeah, right, exactly. That's exactly what we did. Please don't quote me on that, even though it's being recorded. But this meeting is being recorded. It'll be on Channel 18 in a couple, probably 1 to 2 days. As you can see, the purpose of the meeting tonight is an update on the sewer expansion in Centerville Village. So that's what the focus will be. I have Griffin Bowden, our town engineer. He'll run pretty much all the meeting after I sit down. And Kelly Colopy is here as well. She's a new addition to DPW, and she's handling communication. She's done a fantastic job. So I'll turn it over to Griffin. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Appreciate it and appreciate you helping us coordinate this evening. Again, I'm Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. Wanted to have a couple housekeeping items before we get started here. We have a lot to cover tonight, so I just want to retain questions till the end, if we can do that. And then if you have questions on your specific property, if we can just wait until after the meeting, and I'll be hanging around and we can talk about specific, what's happening on your specific property. Happy to do that as long as we need to, but just don't want to take everybody's time up on specific property issues or anything like that. What we're here for tonight is to provide an update on sewer expansion in Centerville Village. Now Centerville is a big area, right? So we are going to hit upon all of Centerville, inclusive of the ongoing construction projects we're planning, but the real topic for discussion tonight is what we're calling the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project, which is expansion along the Park City Wind preferred route. So that will be kind of the key topic of discussion that we'll get to in the second half of the presentation. A few things we're not going to talk about tonight are updates on Park City Wind. This is a town project we're discussing tonight, so I'm not going to get into any of their permit statuses or any of their financial statuses. Frankly, I don't know about it, and at this point, I'm in the process of planning a sewer expansion project that I have to assume will be done in conjunction with that project. So those are the assumptions we're operating under tonight. The other thing we're not going to talk about tonight, and the reason we're not talking about this tonight is because we have another meeting scheduled to talk about it, and that's impacts or improvements to the historic Main Street corridor. We have a public meeting, informational session / working group that we're going to be pulling together on April 4th. That'll be at the Adult Community Center at 6 p.m., where we'll be focusing on that topic. We're going to touch upon some design plans in that area just to kind of see what we're looking at from the utility perspective, but we're not going to get into any restoration improvements or any of those topics tonight. So we're focused on sewer tonight, and we're going to try to stay on topic to the extent we can. All right, so quick agenda of tonight's meeting. We're going to just have a brief overview of the CWMP. Why are we doing the sewer expansion, right? Just a refresher for everybody as to what we're trying to accomplish with this program. I'm going to give an overview of all of our phase 1 implementation that's ongoing in the village of Centerville, inclusive of the active construction as well as some planned construction for future projects. And then we're going to get into the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project. Again, that's the project that's being designed along the proposed Park City Wind route. We're going to review the route, talk about impacts of construction, talk about how we're going to coordinate construction with Park City Wind and what that will look like. We're going to talk about the anticipated sewer pump station locations along the route, of which there are 6. One of them is Mothers Park, in the area of Mothers Park, which we've had discussions about. Handful of discussions. I think the most recent one was in December of 2021, so we're going to provide an update since then. And then we'll just go over the project funding and the project schedule, and then we'll have a Q&A session. All right, so what is the CWMP, right? The CWMP is the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. What it really is a planning document that's required by regulatory agencies, and it identifies the town's wastewater needs and establishes a recommended plan for addressing them. Barnstable CWMP was approved in April of 2021. We're currently in year 2 of a 30-year plan, and we'll revisit the 30-year plan in a minute. What are the general problems that the CWMP is trying to address? Well, the first and the largest one is impaired coastal waters, which all of our south-facing embayment systems are impaired by nitrogen. So the key goal here is to try to remove nitrogen from the environment. We'll talk about nitrogen in a minute. Also, we're trying to address groundwater quality concerns. We sit on top of a sole source aquifer, and that's where we get our drinking water from. And so we're trying to find ways to minimize contamination to that important resource. Pond water quality concern. Everybody is probably aware that we've been seeing decreased water quality in our freshwater ponds in town, including cyanobacteria blooms and other water quality concerns. Many of these actually trace back to wastewater issues as well, so the plan does intend to address some of those concerns. Flood zones and climate change, making sure that we consider changes in climate and impacts to wastewater infrastructure within those flood zones and areas that will be impacted by climate change. And promoting targeted economic development. We worked with our planning staff in the development of the plan to identify locations where, Title V is currently restricting growth that may be desired in certain locations, not everywhere, in locations that it makes sense, right? So that's one of the other goals of the plan. And then regulatory requirements, which there are, the plan is a regulatorily required document. So just a review of what nitrogen pollution in Barnstable means. So nitrogen pollution has been documented by the Massachusetts Estuary Project. You've probably heard of it, called the MEP. This was a series of reports that were undertaken by the UMass Dartmouth School of Marine and Science Technologies, starting in the 1990s and through the late 2000s. And really what it did is it studied each coastal embayment system on the Cape and really some of southeastern New England as well. What it found is that Barnstable's coastal waters are impaired by nitrogen. And it identified effectively a nitrogen budget for all of these systems, which is called a total maximum daily load. Under the Clean Water Act, communities are required to achieve these total maximum daily loads and make remediation measures to ensure that we do. That's where the CWMP comes into play. So this chart here, a little hard to see right now. Where is the laser? There it is. Okay, so you have the big blue pie here on the pie chart. That's this is showing controllable sources of nitrogen on Cape Cod. This is from the 208 report that was done by the Cape Cod Commission in 2015. And what it's showing is that about 78% of all the controllable nitrogen that enters the coastal embayments comes from septic systems. And that's why we're talking about wastewater management, because that's the biggest chunk and the most controllable chunk of the issue. There are other contributors. Stormwater is in gray, it's about 8%. Fertilizer is in this whitish, it's about 9%. Really hard to control the fertilizer, and certainly wouldn't achieve the goals that we need to achieve through this program. So a couple notes on septic systems. Title V septic systems, which is what the standard is in Massachusetts right now, are really not designed to handle nitrogen. And there are innovative alternative septic systems that have been designed to address nitrogen, but the currently approved ones do not address enough do not remove enough nitrogen to meet TMDLs in Barnstable. And as a result, the plan identifies sewer expansion as the main source to sewer expansion and wastewater treatment as the main way to address the TMDLs in the community. So what about the do-nothing approach, right? What's the cost of inaction? Well, Federal Clean Water Act requires communities to meet the TMDLs, so not doing so could result in an enforcement order or fines or other negative impacts to the community. But also, it will result in further damage to the water quality and our important water resources, which inevitably will have a negative impact on the local economy and on property values. And obviously, those are all bad things that we're trying to avoid, right? In addition, there are newly proposed Title V regulations that, some of you may have heard about. And effectively, what that's saying is that if communities don't implement a watershed management plan similar to the comprehensive wastewater management plan, every property that's located within an impaired watershed will need to install an innovative alternative septic system. And I just said a little while ago that they actually don't even achieve the TMDLs in some of our coastal waterways in Barnstable. So we don't really view that as a good solution. We want to find a solution that's going to address the problem, and we'll do it in a manner that can be replicated and can be moved forward. So what is Barnstable's plan? Barnstable's plan is a three 10-year phases of sewer expansion, effectively. So about 190 miles of new sewers will be installed in this community through this plan. Little under 12,000 properties are scheduled to be connected to the sewer system. And each phase is not one big project. Each phase is broken up into about a dozen or so smaller projects to make them more manageable, make it so that we can coordinate traffic disruption, believe it or not, and make it so that it's more easily to execute and more achievable to execute. It leverages the existing infrastructure that this community is fortunate to have, including the water pollution control facility. We already have a wastewater treatment plant. That's a good head start for most communities, that's the first step for most communities in trying to implement wastewater management, is they have to build their treatment plant. We don't have to do that. We also have an existing sewer collection system that we're leveraging to the extent possible, but we need to build that out in order to get to the other parts of the community that need to be served. It incorporates non-traditional projects to the extent possible. What are non-traditional projects? They're dredging, stormwater projects like that aren't sewers. They aren't necessarily hard infrastructure, but their goals are to achieve nutrient removal and reduce nitrogen entering the coastal embayments. What's different about Barnstable's plan from some other plans are we're not relying on these projects to remove nitrogen from our system. What we're going to do is we're going to install these projects more or less at risk, measure them, and then go back to the regulatory agencies and say, they've removed this much nitrogen, let's talk about removing sewers. So that's the approach we've taken, and frankly, regulators looked upon it pretty fondly, rather than trying to negotiate nitrogen credits and trying to project what something was going to do. We're going to measure it, and we'll take credits based off that, and frankly, that will actually address the issue rather than maybe regulatorily doing so. And it requires adaptive management. The plan has to be flexible, and it has been approved to be flexible. So as we worked with regulatory agencies to have the plan permitted, they acknowledged and we acknowledged that things are going to change over 30 years, right? Things have changed over the first 2 years. We have new projects that come in from the outside, new opportunities, such as one we're going to talk about tonight, to expedite certain sections of the sewer system and be able to save some money or minimize disruption by sequencing along with a partner, for instance. So it's important that we're able to do that. Our permitting of this plan allows us to do that. We are able to more or less expedite sections of the plan as long as we're achieving the overall goals of the plan. And we are required to provide a 5-year update to regulators each 5 years, which is effectively a look back and a look ahead of what have we accomplished and what do we look to accomplish over the next 5 years and any changes. And actually each year we have to provide an annual update to the Cape Cod Commission. We've had one of those so far because we're in year 2. We'll have another one coming up in July that we have to submit. You can actually find the annual report on the Barnstable Water Resources website, which documents what we've done to date and what we're seeing as changes and what we see that we're doing moving forward. So if you're interested in diving into that, I welcome you to take a look at the website. This is what the plan looks like. So that this is what was approved in November of this is what was submitted in November of 2020 and ultimately approved by the regulatory agencies. So what you have is you have a bunch of colors there over the community. In red are the phase 1 projects. They're at 10 years of sewer expansion. In green is phase 2, 11 to 20 years. Yellow, phase 3, 21 to 30 years. And then you have some additional colors out in the Catuit area, which we've called the stages. They don't have a time associated with them yet because they're at the time of the document being being prepared. There were discussions about a potential western solution, and those discussions are still ongoing. So this is the approved plan, and then here's a change. Little hard to see here right now, but this is what you'll see if you look at that annual report that I noted from the Cape Cod Commission, and there's a circle right here, and that's the area we're really focused on tonight, a portion of the area we're focused on tonight. So a small portion of the proposed Park City Wind route was originally shown in Phase 2. We'll be expediting it into Phase 1 in order to be able to partner with that project potentially. So I said earlier that each phase is broken up into a number of different projects. That's what this looks like. That's what this is. That's what it looks like. So each of these colors designates a different project. So in yellow is the ongoing Strawberry Hill Road Sewer Expansion Project, which is under construction and is about to be completed here over the next couple of months. I have an update on that in a little bit. What we're really principally going to talk about tonight is this project in purple, which is the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion, along the Park City Wind route. And then there's a number of other projects that we have a quick update on that will be continuing to develop as we proceed through Phase 1. We have about 6 to 8 projects that we're currently actively working on in some level of the design phase or implementation in construction. So a lot going on, a lot happening in parallel paths. This is what it looks like from a schedule perspective. Again, the lighting is kind of killing us right here a little bit. There are some blue blocks that you're not able to see, but what's really important is the red blocks. So we have this vertical line here, that kind of designates where we are today here in March of 2023. This black was like kind of the beginning of Phase 1, and this side over here would be year 10, the end of Phase 1. These are all the various projects that'll be executed during Phase 1. In the red block, we're showing the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion, which is the main one we're going to talk about tonight. Second one down, you see the Strawberry Hill Road project, and you see it was projected to be completed by the end of fiscal year 23, and here we are approaching the end of fiscal year 23, and we're coming to the end of that. So that project is on time, on schedule, and on budget. There's a number of other projects that are shown on here that have various timeframes. You can find this in the annual report as well if you're interested as to the schedule of your specific project. In addition, we're going to go through that a little bit here in the next couple of slides. So the Strawberry Hill Road Sewer Expansion Project, I already kind of alluded to it here, but the project's we're winding down on the project at this point. We're, as the graph shows, about 95% complete with that project. In fact, the final stick of gravity sewer pipe went in on March 8th, which was exciting. We are still working on some of the service laterals that need to be installed along the northerly portion of the project, and then the pump station that's down at the intersection of Craigville Beach Road and Strawberry Hill Road, scheduled to be completed sometime in April, and then we'll be closing out that construction contract, which will be exciting for all of us over at DPW for sure. In the fall, we will be coming back to make some adjustments to some of the laterals that were installed in the southern portion of the project. So they were designed and installed deep, and for the convenience of residents that live there, we're going to raise them up so that they're a little easier to tie into for people when they hire their contractors to connect. So should help folks save a little money when they come to connect. So Vineyard Wind construction continues. As you all will probably know, this was the project that was coordinated with Vineyard Wind. Their duct bank construction continues. They're going to be up on Finney's Lane here, beginning on the 20th, and they'll be working through Memorial Day on installation of their duct bank in the northerly portion of Finney's Lane. They will have to pull cable after they install their duct bank. That's probably going to happen in June. That likely will require some level of alternating traffic at that time, and we're working through the traffic management plan for that period of time. So schedule up there relative to anticipated paving schedules. When are all these roads going to get fixed, right? Spring of 2023, we're anticipating Addicks Lane to be get their final paving. Craigville Beach Road, it looks great right now. It's actually only what's called the binder course, which is the bottom course. We're going to be putting another 1.5 inches on the top, which will be the final paving there. And then Strawberry Hill Road will get its final restoration this spring as well. In the fall, after the summer goes through, we have to allow trenches to settle for a certain period of time. We want at least 90 days to allow trenches to settle because that's usually the amount of time that you see that a big settlement occur. And if we want to make sure that we address that before we do a final restoration of pavement. So we're going to allow the summer to go through, and then Vineyard Wind will be back in the fall to pave Finney's Lane and Woquocket Lane. So the second project that's currently under construction right now is really two projects from our perspective, but it's really one big project. We manage 2 construction contracts for it, but it's one big project, and it's called the Route 28 East Sewer Expansion Project. This is what I call the probably most foundational piece of infrastructure we're going to install as part of the CWMP, other than improvements we make at the wastewater treatment plant. So what this project is doing right now, and I'm sure you're all very aware of the project, is installing the pump station at the intersection of 28 and Finney's Lane. That pump station is going to be the piece of infrastructure that will allow for the remainder of the western expansion of sewer that we showed on that map. So everything to the west of that is going to go through that piece of infrastructure moving forward. In addition, there will be new pipes that come all the way from that piece of property to the wastewater treatment plant, which all that flow will come through. The existing collection system couldn't handle it, so we needed to build a new pipe. Also, as part of the project, and you're seeing this right now, is the southerly portion of Finney's Lane that's north of 28. So there's digging going on kind of on Finney's Lane north of that pump station site. That's part of this effort, actually. It's separate from the other construction that's ongoing. They're going to be continuing that effort till about April. They're going to stop, and they'll be back on Finney's in the fall, but they're going to be transitioning to Route 28 in April to start some sewer construction effectively from that pump station to about West Main Street. So that will be under construction. That section of 28 will be under construction from April to about Memorial Day. And then we will be back in the fall to continue the force mains to the wastewater treatment plant, which will not be as disruptive as the work we're going to be doing here over the next couple of 6 to 8 weeks, as we have to install some gravity sewer in Route 28, which is deeper and more complicated work. But this was all obviously anticipated as part of this program. There will be a one-direction detour in place, so westbound traffic on 28 will remain on 28. Eastbound traffic will be detoured down West Main Street during the construction hours during this time. So it will be certainly, there will be delays. We're already seeing delays. We will be seeing additional delays on that section of roadway during this time. Fortunately, they'll be starting after or before the beginning of schools, so we won't be delaying kids getting to school too much. But the construction will be going from about 8:30 to 5 on any particular day. In addition to this project, we talked about the Finney's Lane pump station. Right now, they're continuing to pour the concrete for the foundation, and I got some pictures of that, which you'll see in a second. So this is some of the sewer construction that has been ongoing. On the left is actually the final manhole being installed as part of the Strawberry Hill Road project. As I was saying, that's coming to an end. That was the last manhole being installed. On the right is the gravity sewer installation that's happening on the southern portion of Finney's Lane as part of the Route 28 East project, kind of around near that pump station. You'll see the difference in the two pictures. The last manhole we put in on Strawberry Hill Road was about 10 feet deep. On the right-hand side, we're about 20-ish feet deep. So that's why you have the roadway closed, and you can see some pipes on the side. We're actually down in groundwater, so we need to pump the hole dry in order to make sure it's a safe environment for the workers to be working in, and we can have some stable bedding to install the pipe and everything. So some complicated construction ongoing in the community right now. This is the pump station, as it looks back in February, actually. So you saw the big crane. There was a reason for the big crane. We dug a big hole, poured a bunch of concrete, built a bunch of rebar. We're coming up with that now over the course of the next month or so. We should be wrapping up the foundation work, which will be great, and then we'll start actually seeing a building going up here over the course of the spring and into the summer. But just wanted to show this picture to show what all the construction over there was all about. All right, so one of the next planning projects that we're currently working on is the Route 28 West sewer expansion. So we had the Route 28 East sewer expansion. This is the next section of work in Route 28. Route 28 is really the backbone of the planned system. It allows us to get out west because it's the main roadway right down the center of town, right? So this project will extend sewer from Finney's Lane all the way to 149. And we're anticipating that we've awarded the design contract late last year. Design's ongoing, and we're expecting that construction to start in 2025. So a series of, the next step after that is a whole number of neighborhood projects, right? So we're doing a lot of the main roads right now, kind of have to do that first, and then we're going to start getting into neighborhoods. The first of which is the Finney's Lane sewer expansion project, which is shown in light purple, right in this area. So what it is the neighborhoods on either side of Finney's Lane, north of 28, between 28 and 132. So we'll be extending sewer into those neighborhoods as part of that project. The survey is complete. We've done some internal design. We have a design staff at DPW who's doing the preliminary design for that, and we'll be hiring a consultant to finalize the design over the course of the next year and expect construction to start in 2025. In orange is the Long Pond area sewer expansion project. This is the area around Long Pond, Centerville, right? Again, neighborhood project. This is getting into all the neighborhoods that are off of really Pine Street and Main Street in that area, South Main Street, and starting to collect flow from the neighborhoods. This is where we start to actually see the nitrogen reduction significantly, because that's where the nitrogen's coming from the homes. It's coming from your septic systems. When we're putting in the infrastructure in the main roads, it's not as dense, right? There's not as many homes per foot that we're putting in. But once we start getting into neighborhoods, that's where we start collecting more nitrogen and start actually making a significant dip into that. Two more projects here is, so Long Pond area construction's anticipated to start in 2027. Old Craigville Road, that is down in this area. It's effectively the neighborhoods on either side of Strawberry Hill Road, from Pine Street to Craigville Beach Road. Old Craigville kind of runs diagonally through that. We chose the name Old Craigville Road. So similar to the other two projects, neighborhoods down in that area. Construction's anticipated to start in 2026. Old Yarmouth Road is the kind of triangle that's formed by Yarmouth Road and 28 and the Yarmouth Town Line. That's, that commercial area with the car dealerships and everything else that's going on up there. Sewer expansion's expected to start up there after the intersection improvement project stops, so that we're not in conflict with DOT's work that's ongoing there now. That's principally going to be in the back roads. A little bit will happen in Yarmouth Road, but it's principally going to be back in Old Yarmouth Road and Rosary Lane back there. That's scheduled to start in 2027. Shoot Flying Hill Road sewer expansion is the pink roads that are pink neighborhood roads that are on either side of Shoot Flying Hill Road. Actually, Shoot Flying Hill Road will be in the project we're talking about tonight, but the neighborhoods will be what's been called the Shoot Flying Hill Road project. That, again, is 2027. Two more projects that are kind of active in-house is the Long Beach sewer expansion project. So Long Beach sewer expansion actually includes quite a bit more than just Long Beach. It includes Short Beach. It includes Lake Elizabeth area. So that'll be expansion into those areas. The design funds for that are scheduled to be included in this upcoming year's capital budget. And we expect construction to start in 2027. Last project before we get into the main project for tonight is the Great Marsh Road sewer expansion project, which is here in green, right there. Again, neighborhoods on either side of Great Marsh Road, scheduled to start in 2028. So that brings us to the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project, which again is really what we're here to talk about tonight. So this is again is the route along the preferred upland duck bank route of the Park City Wind project. It's about 5 miles of new sewers. We're anticipating about 6 new sewer pump stations are necessary along this route, as it's a 5-mile long route with a number of low points and things along the route. And about 350 new properties are along the route that will connect to the route once we are completed. The design is being coordinated with the Park City Wind design. That's out of necessity, as I alluded to earlier. We're operating under the assumption that that project will be happening, and we need to make sure a corridor is maintained for the duck bank to be installed and for us to get a sewer in the ground in these roadways prior to that duck bank going in. We're anticipating at this time construction to be sequenced with Park City Wind, and we'll talk about what that would look like if that's to happen. Every indication I have at this point is that that's what we still will be doing. But obviously, as I talked about earlier, there are some questions up in the air there. I'm not going to get into that too much, but we're planning, forging ahead with the assumption that construction will be happening in conjunction with them. Anticipated construction start is the spring of 2024. We expect it to be about a 2-year construction project. It's going to remove about 6.6 kilograms per day of nitrogen from the Centerville River watershed, which is a decent little chunk of what we're going to be doing in phase 1. So I'm going to review the route just real quick. So what I've done is I've taken the last map and just kind of turned it 90 degrees. So north is on the right side of your plan of the figure here. On the left side is Craigville Beach and Craigville Beach Road. The sewer expansion is actually going to start at Coville's Beach because as part of the Strawberry Hill, we stopped at Coville's Beach and we need to pick up those pipes and bring them to a pump station that'll be located along Craigville Beach Road. So the sewer expansion will be all of Craigville Beach Road from Coville's Beach to South Main. It will include Main Street. So this would be the historic Main Street here, and then the spur of Main Street up to Finney's Lane and North Main Street with Mother's Park being right in this location. 28 would be right about here on this plan. And again, I'm sorry that it's a little dim with the lighting that we have here. It's going to take the turn. It's going to take the turn up Old Stage, cross 28 there, and then it will take a kind of a right onto Chute Flying Hill Road and go all the way up Chute Flying Hill Road to the service road. That's that is the Park City Wind route that is proposed at this time. In addition, there's a little spur right here. So this is the intersection of Main Street and Old Stage. And this would be that stretch of Main Street that turns into Finney's Lane, 228, that goes right past Mother's Park. The reason we need to do that is because this portion in here of what I'm showing with the laser pointer really can't function without infrastructure being installed on that roadway because we need to install a sewer pump station in the area of Mother's Park to make that all function. We'll talk about that a little more in a little bit, but that's why that spur is part of the project. So it's really not part of the Park City Wind project, but has to be installed for the sewer infrastructure to be effective. So let's talk about some construction impacts for a minute, right? We're all starting to see what the sewer expansion program looks like, what these construction projects look like, so we'll go over that here. And the assumption in this slide is that this is coordinated with Park City Wind too, so there's some discussion about what a duck bank construction would look like too. So both the sewer and duck bank construction are pretty significant infrastructure projects, right? The sewers require deep excavations, 10 to 15 feet deep, at times down below 20 feet deep, which requires significant trench boxes, big equipment, et cetera. The duck bank construction is significant construction too. They're installing pretty wide duck banks, a lot of concrete, a lot of pipe. They're a little shallower, but they're complicated construction. And then they also have to install vaults along their route about every 1,500 feet or so. Vaults are massive. They're about 9 feet wide and 30 feet long or so, about 9 feet deep. So they bring a crane in to place the vault, and you may or may not have seen that along the Vineyard Wind route. That's similar to what would need to happen along the Park City Wind route. Again, every 1,500 linear feet strategically placed, but part of the project. So with the multiple efforts comes multiple contractors that have to be coordinated. Coordinated road closures. I think we've seen that this construction is really not safe for cars to be driving by. It's deep, it's wide, there's a lot of equipment. Really need to lock down the work zone in order to make sure the public's safe. It does require so those coordinated road closures include details, police details, and when there's not enough police details, we supplement them with flaggers who are certified for roadway flagging, and then signage and press releases and everything like that to try to make sure that everybody's aware to the extent possible, what detour is being used at this time. Trimming of trees above the roadway is necessary due to the size of the construction. So if we're doing sewer construction on a particular side of the road, we do need to trim what's above it because we have about a 30-foot tall excavator to the top of the boom to be able to get down far enough. And sometimes we don't need to have equipment that big if we're not quite as deep, but in general, that's the size of equipment that you're seeing out on the roadway right now and that we would expect to see during an effort like this. With construction comes noise and vibrations. Obviously, look to manage those to the extent possible. Fences and landscaping that are located within the public way do need to be relocated at times. And so we come out and we mark the public way, and then we'll have those conversations with residents if we need to. And obviously, uneven road surfaces. While we're in the temporary paving time frame before the final restoration, you'll see some uneven roads. Doesn't really happen all that often, or hasn't, knock on wood, but there's a potential for temporary utility disruptions, particularly water or gas, if a utility's hit during the excavation, or if a utility needs to be relocated. So how are some of these impacts mitigated? Our regular work hours are 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. That's not just a sewer project, that's really any construction projects within the roadways in the town of Barnstable. We do authorize extended hours when it's advantageous. So if it's going to allow for some additional work to happen or work to happen quicker, we'll take that under advisement and make that call. No work is allowed between Memorial Day and Labor Day. However, similar to the extended hours, we do consider that at certain times. If we're 2 weeks worth of work away and then we don't need to come back to an area, we're probably just going to try to wrap things up rather than come back in the fall and start disrupting everybody in that area again. So that's a case-by-case basis, but the starting point is Memorial Day to Labor Day, we try to stay out of the roadways. We strive to have close project coordination with the wind developer. We coordinate our schedules, lay down areas, work zones, trucking routes, detours, everything. Constantly talking with them and their contractors in order to make sure that we both know where everybody is and we can coordinate things to minimize disruption and expedite work. That includes road closures. Obviously, we need to make sure that we know where they are and what roads they're going to impact in order to make sure that the detours will function properly. We hold a weekly meeting that actually DPW hosts that includes the wind developer, Barnstable Police Department, Fire Department, schools. We'll bring in other groups as necessary to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what's happening, and so that any disruptions can be mitigated to the extent possible. Roadways must remain accessible to local traffic, so if you live within a closed roadway, you're still going to be able to get to your house. If the trench is between the closure and your house, you're probably going to have to go around, but we'll have flaggers there that will help advise you on that. But if you are between the closure and the trench, then you'll be able to be let through and be able to get to your house, and we'll be accommodating that. So we use multiple communication platforms. I won't read them all, but they're the website, e-news, social media, etc. We have full-time town-employed construction inspectors along the sewer route. At each of the holes that we have open during the sewer construction project, we have one of our inspectors there so that we can talk to the residents that are near the hole and help them navigate any issues that they may have. Hey, I need to get out of my house and get to work, and you happen to be in front of my driveway. Okay, let's try to find a way to make that work, right? Or, hey, I'm going to be back from work at 3 o'clock today, and then I'm going to need to head back out. Can we... Got it. We'll make sure we're waiting for you, and we have a way to get you in and out to the extent possible. Sometimes it's not practical to do that, but to the extent we can, we try to make those accommodations. And then restoration of the public right-of-way at the end. You know, we have a new road at the end of the project, which is nice. And we, with this particular project, are going to be developing some detailed vibration monitoring and mitigation specifications within sensitive areas, really the historic district and any areas where there's some older homes that we might be concerned about, you know, impacts of vibration or anything like that. So we are working on that, and we'll continue to implement best measures to address that concern. So coordinating and sequencing construction with Park City Wind. I'll go through this pretty quick, but I want to just address maybe some misnomers with the previous project, which was the Strawberry Hill and Vineyard Wind project, and that's that all the utilities go in the ground at the same time. That's not what happens, and they don't go in the same hole. They're being installed in different utility corridors, so a trench here, and that's being done for a number of reasons. The first of which is one's a town project and one's a private project. There's two contractors, two contracts, and so they have to be done sequenced separately as a result of that. But also the type of work's different. Sewer construction is inevitably deep because we try to utilize gravity in order to drain wastewater to low points and then pump them to the wastewater treatment plant. So they end up being the deepest utility. So that needs to be installed first. So there's some preparation before that. We mark out utilities, we trim trees, but then we get into the sewer construction and we install the mains, and then there are lateral connections that need to be installed to every property. So that all happens. Then we test the sewers. After that point, at least on the Vineyard Wind project, and the way we would expect the Centerville project in coordination with Park City Wind would be any utility relocations that need to happen would then occur, and they would most likely be done by the wind developer. So once we're done with the sewer construction, we'll be on to the next portion of the work, and the wind developer would come in that particular case, start the utility relocations, and then start their duct bank work. The duct bank work would be in a separate utility corridor installed. Then they have to test the duct bank, and then they have to pull the cable. So once all that has occurred, and I'll show some pictures of what those all look like, then we repave the roads and we're done. So that happens over a sequence of months. Try to coordinate them as close as possible so that they occur at least in, if not within the same construction window, it's the same. It's two simultaneous construction windows to try to mitigate the amount of time that we're in front of any particular property. So again, first step is some preparation, utility mark out, tree trimming. So this is an example of some tree trimming along the Strawberry Hill project. Again, this was along an area where the sewer construction was going to happen. Some limbs were a little too low in order to get the equipment in, so we had to trim the trees above where that work was going to happen. Not horizontally, but above. Road closures, right? We've seen these all over town, so those get set up before the construction starts. One thing I want to point out is we do work with businesses to the extent possible. This was on West Main Street late last year. Folks are interested in having a sign made up or something like that, we'll certainly put it out each day and try to promote business and let folks know that that these businesses are still open during construction. Sewer excavation, right? So this is what sewer excavation looks like. We're digging a hole in the roadway and putting a trench box in and then laying some pipe in the hole. There's a simple way to look at it, but what you see there is you see some big equipment, right? And a mess during the construction. Well, that's what it looks like. And then once we come at the end of the day on the right side of the screen, we're backfilling the trench. So you're starting to see the roadway get a little cleaner there, right? As the work day is winding down. And then we temporarily pave at the end of the week. So we'll leave it with stone until Friday, and we pave once a week all the trenches that were installed in that particular day. So on the right side is what you see kind of at the end of each week. Duct bank construction looks like this. The vaults that I was referring to are these here. So you see a crane that had to be set up on a roadway to install this large vault into this excavation. This on the right side is what a duct bank looks like. And so what a duct bank is a series of pipes that they will pull the cables through, and it's encased in concrete. And And so that's what that looks like, and they have trench boxes that basically support the excavation during the construction. And then they have to come in with these large cable reels and pull the cables through the duct banks. And then at the end of the day, you have a final paved road. So this is an example of what that looks like on a segment of Main Street, actually. So this is a preliminary design plan that shows on the right side of the screen, or left side of the screen, would be the intersection, the Four Seas intersection, Main Street, Centerville, Craigville Beach Road, and South Main Street. This is heading north onto Main Street at this point. So what you're seeing here is in the red is the limits of the town-owned roadway, of the right-of-way. In orange is the edge of the existing pavement. So that's the area we have to work with, right? It's, in theory, that's where we're trying to site the infrastructure and keep it in the roadway. In this particular case, in the northbound lane, so if you're heading north, it would be on the right side, right? Is where the sewer infrastructure is anticipated to be installed. And on the southbound lane is this gray area. That's the duct bank that would be proposed to be installed on the southbound, or if you're heading north, the left side of Main Street. One thing to note here is there are other utilities in the roadway. This yellow line here, probably hard to see, is a gas main. It happens to be in the shoulder here, so it's nice and out of the way, which is great for the construction through this area. You also have a water main in this area. It's right along kind of the southbound edge of pavement, and it'll be in close proximity to the duct bank, and engineers are looking at if we need to relocate that section of water main in that location. So this is kind of a graphical representation of how congested and how much is going on in the roadway with these designs. It also shows you graphically that they're not going in the same trench. They're really using the whole paved roadway, and sewer's going in on one side of the road and the duct bank's going in on the other side of the road, because they're both pretty big. They require some wide excavations, and that's really the only practical way to do it. Another section of the roadway here near the Centerville Recreation Building. Again, in red is the edge of the roadway. Orange is the edge of pavement. Sewer would be on the northbound side, within the northbound lane. The duct bank would be on the southbound lane. In this case, the water is a little bit further separated, which may result in being able to retain that water main. However, there are some discussions about the fact that the water main's old and it may need to be upgraded anyway. So those conversations are ongoing, and there has not been a decision made on that. I know Comwater is having conversations with the wind developer about that issue. All right, so going to quickly go through the anticipated sewer pump station locations along the route, and then we'll have an update on Mother's Park, which is one of the 6 sewer pump stations along the route. So I've listed the locations of the proposed sewer pump stations. You can see them graphically on the left side of the screen approximately. So we have one proposed at Craigville Beach in the parking lot. We have one proposed within the town right away just north of the Centerville River Bridge, and I'll show a picture of where that is. We have one that's going to be necessary along Old Stage Road at a low point. We do not have the location identified yet, as there's no town property in the location, so we're in the process of trying to figure out where we're going to site that infrastructure. If we're not able to site the infrastructure, folks may need to have grinder pumps in that area, so we're trying to avoid that. The 4th pump station would be the one in the area of Mother's Park. There's a 5th pump station along Chute Flying Hill Road. Same deal as number 3. We're in the process of trying to figure out where that's going to go. We're still vetting that. And then pump station 6 serves the northerly portion of the project. There's a town-owned piece of property at 467 Chute Flying Hill Road that we're looking to site that piece of infrastructure on. Quick reminder of how a sewer system works before we start talking about pump stations. So we try to leverage gravity sewer. We try to leverage gravity when we install sewer collection systems to the extent possible. So here's you at your house. Your plumbing of your house drains out, and right now it goes to a septic system, right? It will be intercepted and it be installed to connect to this public sewer main that'll be installed under the roadway, which I just showed in the other pictures. Those all have slope to them, and they slope to a low point where we collect the sewage that is flowing through them into what's called a pump station. That is basically an underground tank where all this wastewater collects with pumps that then will take the wastewater, pump it through what's called a sewer force main, which is effectively just a pipe under pressure, to the point at which we're looking to pump it. Many times it's a wastewater treatment plant, and other times it can be other portions of the sewer collection system that go to another pump station, and we have a daisy chain of pump stations before we get there. So just a quick reminder as to what that is and how we operate pump stations. So when we have a pump station, we are required to visit it once a day. So that looks like basically a pickup truck coming to the facility and doing a visual inspection of the key infrastructure. It's required by DEP. It's good practice to make sure the infrastructure is working well. We also have all the stations remotely monitored, so our operators at the wastewater plant, if there's something that goes wrong or there's an alarm, will get a text message, and then they'll send somebody out to go maintain the station. Periodic maintenance does occur if something's at the end of its useful life or failing. That's not very frequent. Generators are installed at most of these stations. They are exercised once a week for 15 minutes, so you do hear the generator run. That's similar to what you would have when you have a generator at your house. You want to keep them working well and make sure that they're being operated, because that's the best way to make them work well. Odors and noise are really generally not an issue for pump stations when they're functioning properly. If we start smelling them, there's something wrong and we have to fix it. But generally, the sewage is contained below grade, so you don't notice it until in the unlikely event something goes wrong, which fortunately doesn't happen all that often with this type of infrastructure. Landscaping at these sites are maintained by town crews. So then we're getting into the actual pump station sites. I talked about Craigville Beach. So I talked earlier about the fact that we need to connect the pipe that we left for Strawberry Hill Road project near Covell's Beach to a low point. That low point's going to be Craigville Beach, or the area of Craigville Beach. We're proposing it to be at Craigville Beach parking lot. So there's a star shown right here in the northerly portion of the parking lot. That would be what's called a submersible pump station, which is a below grade pump station where the wastewater would come into and the pumps would be. We also show this square next to the existing bathhouse. The reason for that is the electrical infrastructure has to be above the flood elevation for climate resiliency, but also regulatorily we're required to put that infrastructure above a flood elevation, because if it floods, it fails. There's no point in having a sewer system at that point, right? So I have on the next sheet, I'll show you what the concept is for that structure. Trying to leverage the bathhouse in order to try to make it less visually impactful, but can't put it on the bathhouse because the bathhouse actually isn't designed to withstand a flood either. So as part of this project, there are tight tanks that currently serve the bathhouse. So when you go to that bathhouse, there are tight tanks which basically hold the wastewater that's generated there, and then it has to get pumped out over when it gets full. Those will be decommissioned and be connected to this pump station, be part of the municipal sewer system, which will be great. This infrastructure will ultimately serve the areas around Lake Elizabeth, around Covell's Beach, around Craigville Beach, around Short Beach, and around Long Beach. So it'll basically allow for the build out of this area of the sewer collection system. So this is our concept for what that could look like. And so what we have here is, this is if you're sitting on the beach looking at the bathhouse. This is the existing bathhouse, and on the right side, one concept is the idea of a clock tower. And so what this would be is a structure that the bottom, in a flooding event, would basically have breakaway panels, and you would basically just have a structure that would remain in a flooding event, and above it would be an enclosed structure that would have all the electrical equipment in it and would be able to survive a flooding event. It would be designed for climate change. It's required to be 3 feet above the flood elevation. So in this area, that's about 15 feet off the ground. Believe it or not. So ultimately, the top of a proposed structure there would be roughly the top of the existing bathhouse for as far as the ridge. And it's relatively small in footprint from what we're looking at right now, about 10 by 10. So not a huge structure, but certainly would be noticeable in the area. Would certainly be interested in ideas or feedback on the idea of a clock tower. That was just an idea that we came up with, trying to make something that we put there useful, as opposed to just a structure that goes next to the bathhouse and everyone's saying, what the heck is that thing doing there, right? So try to find a reason to at least make it useful. Some other ideas we've had are like a lighthouse or something like that. But at the end of the day, we were trying to avoid just a big ugly steel structure that has a bunch of electrical equipment on it, right? So wanted to go through that. Second site, as I alluded to, is just north of the Centerville River Bridge. On the right side, you can see a little star right there. Here's the Centerville River Bridge. There's a big open area of the town, public-owned right-of-way, that is a cleared shoulder here. And so we would propose, there's enough room there to install a sewer pump station, so we would propose to put it there. Serves a very small area. It's really just from the Four Seas intersection south to here, so there's only a couple dozen homes that are going to be served by it. But we try to install a municipal solution as opposed to requiring all those homes to have a grinder pump on them. So in this case, we were able to do that, and so that's one location that we're looking to install this infrastructure. I talked about the northerlymost pump station, which was 567 Chute Flying Hill Road. Again, that's a town-owned piece of infrastructure, town-owned parcel. Just to orient you, the Lake Wequaquet boat ramp would be, 1,000, 1,500 feet north of here. In the back of this property is a wetland, so we have to be smart about how we design this piece of infrastructure, because we need to try to the extent possible, minimize wetland impacts, try to stay out of buffer zones to wetlands, et cetera. So we're in the process of designing this station. We expect it to be a small structure so that we can house some of the equipment within it and really try to blend it into the residential area, probably have it look like an adjacent residential property rather than just a big cleared area. The goal is to minimize the wetland impact and maintain vegetation buffer to the adjacent residential areas. And it serves the whole northerly portion of that map that we talked about earlier. So important piece of infrastructure that we have to install. So then coming back to the southerly part of the project is Mother's Park. So the map on the right side shows the service area of what this piece of infrastructure would serve. So in yellow is everything in our collection system that'll just drain naturally by gravity without any more pump flow. In the magenta area, there'll be other pump stations. One of the ones we talked about was that one north of the Centerville River Bridge that will pump up to the collection system and then eventually to here. So it's going to serve about 200,000 gallons per day, about 950 properties. It's an important piece of infrastructure for the build out of this area. It's currently proposed within the current location of Mother's Park Road, which I'll show on a map in a second. And it would require the realignment of the intersection of Finney's at North Main in order to get rid of Mother's Park Road, as we're all aware of that location. Mother's Park at the end of the day would ultimately be larger, which is a great outcome, and we're continuing with the legal work associated with allowing this effort to happen. So this is Mother's Park. We're all pretty familiar with it. On the right side of the screen is Mother's Park Road, the narrow kind of cut-through roadway that at times can be pretty dangerous if people are speeding up and just flying right through there and not really with a care in the world. Really the reason why that's there is because the intersection of North Main and Main is pretty poor geometry. It's at a 45-degree angle. It's not how you design an intersection. You want to have a 90-degree intersection. So in order for us to remove Mother's Park Road, we're going to need to realign this intersection down here. So what does that look like? This is what it looks like. So the old intersection would be here. It would be in this location at the end of the project. In addition, we would install a crosswalk with a new sidewalk that kind of makes this connection. Along North Main, there is a sidewalk on the south side, so we have a full connection from Main Street to North Main and allow people to utilize Mother's Park a little more. In addition, there's really no parking there, and there's no ADA parking, which is important. So we're going to add an ADA parking space, an accessible parking space, and then a gravel parking area so people can actually park there. And then this portion of what formerly was Mothers Park Road will become part of Mothers Park. We'll take out the pavement, landscape it however the community desires, right, to the extent reasonable, and that will be a larger park at the end of the day. When you do the math of the two areas that have to be removed for the intersection and what gets added there, it's about 500 square feet larger at the end of the day. So it's a slightly larger slightly larger site. Why are we talking about it during a sewer project, right? Well, here's the pump station that would be installed in what was formerly Mothers Park Road. We would leave just a driveway access to that station. This property here, I think it's 43 Long Pond Circle, has a driveway off Mothers Park. We would leave access to their driveway as part of that as well, but it wouldn't be a through road anymore at the end of the day. It would be signed as such. So a sewer improvement, sewer infrastructure improvement, but also really a traffic improvement too at the end of the day, and a safety improvement to those roadways. So good little project that takes advantage of a couple of issues that need to be addressed. So what will the pump station look like? This is the area that the pump station would go in. It would roughly look like this. We certainly could, so these are the hatches and these are the hatches. These are what the electrical panels and the generator roughly will look like. In many of these cases, we put fences around them, so we likely will put a fence around it in this location. But just wanted to show what a preliminary rendering would look like. Driving down Finney's Lane, heading towards Main Street, this is what you see on the left side here. And this is what you would see afterwards if there was nothing else done. And then, you know, there is the option of putting some landscaping in Mothers Park to kind of screen that and dress it up a little bit, or we could do a fence or anything like that. So that's something that we'll have conversations about down the line, but really what the concept is here for this project. This is a similar project that we did up in Barnstable Village on Rendezvous Lane. There was a pump station at the end of Rendezvous Lane that anytime we had a nor'easter, would literally get flooded with water, and we literally would wrap saran wrap around it to try to keep it watertight. It was ridiculous. So we decided we're going to try to move it up. We're going to try to move it away from the water, and we moved it up, and again, 3 feet above the flood elevation to account for climate change. But what that required was putting the pump station in the middle of, if you've been down Rendezvous Lane, there's a little nice island there. And we had some conversations with the neighborhood. I actually held that neighborhood meeting in somebody's garage and had conversations about what is that going to look like, and talked about that quite a bit. Landed on the electrical equipment was probably best to be sited in this location here. We ultimately put a fence around it, which isn't shown here. A nice stockade fences around that now. And then there, just outside of the screen, is a landscaped area here that we came in with our structures and grounds department to dress up the island at the end of the day. And that would be really what we're looking to do at Mothers Park, similar. So you really don't see the infrastructure when you drive by. It's really just a hatch that's in the middle of the island at the end of the day. So progress to date on this. Like I said early on, had a conversation with the village back in December of 2021 about this project. Since then, we've continued to design and refine the concept design. If you remember back in December of 2021, it looked a little different than what I just showed you, but same general concept. Mothers Park Road was a county road technically, so we needed the county to make a vote to rescind their rights to the road. They have since done that. It's now a town road. And we'll need to have some action through the town council to discontinue the roadway in order to be able to actually use it for the uses we're going to use. Mothers Park, however, is protected Article 97 property, as it's a dedicated park. So that requires going to a petition to the legislator in order to change the use of the portion that we're going to utilize for realigning that intersection. So that's something that will be happening over the next couple months here. At least the application will be happening over the next couple months here. In addition, there is we do need to go to probate court because the piece of land was left in a will that's over 100 years old, and it needs to be modified, and we have to go to court the probate court in order for them to allow for that to happen. So these are actions that are ongoing. When I refer to legal actions that need to happen, this is what I'm talking about. They're ongoing, legal teams on this, and all these items need to happen before we can start construction. And until that happens and construction is underway and coming close to the end, the recommendation that we've received is to hold on to 310 Main Street as a result, so that if there's any appeal or anything like that, we are able to have a backup plan, which hopefully we don't have to utilize. So quick overview of funding. The project that we just talked about is a $30 million project. It's a 5 miles of sewer expansion. And 6 pump stations. That adds up pretty quickly. It is included in the recommended fiscal year 24 capital budget, which was just released on the town's website like last week or something like that. It also is listed on the draft 2023 Clean Water State Revolving Fund intended use plan. A lot of words there. What does that mean? That is the mechanism by which federal funds get distributed to states for this type of project. And what ultimately it means for communities, if you get listed on that list, you're eligible for low interest loans. In Barnstable, because we're a housing choice community, we're eligible for 1.5% loans. At the end of projects, they set aside a pot of funds that they issue loan forgiveness, principal forgiveness to communities. For the projects we had on the list in 2021, it was 10.8%. So for this project, that's almost $4 million, $3.5 million. And then in addition, on Cape Cod, we have the Cape Cod and Islands Water Protection Fund, which issues subsidies to communities that have projects on this list. That's how they've decided to issue these subsidies. Again, in 2021, they issued 25% subsidies to projects. With this project, that would be huge. I'm not sure they will have that amount of money in the upcoming year, but we anticipate a subsidy through that fund as well. So there are a number of funding sources that will offset some of the cost of this, but not all. It is anticipated to proceed with construction in fiscal year 24. One thing I'll note, Finance Director Mark Milne provided an update on the financial plan for the whole comprehensive wastewater management plan, not just this project, on January 19th to the town council. Provided the link there. You can go on the town's website and navigate to that meeting. Provides good information as to the financial status of the program and what will need to happen moving forward in order to keep the program viable. So important to understand that. I'm not going to get in the weeds of that because I'm an engineer, but that's just wanted to point everybody in the direction to get that information. And then what's the anticipated schedule? So the votes for capital projects typically happen in the April timeframe in Barnstable. So we expect the vote for from the town council to authorize the construction funds to be around that time. A deadline for us is to have the design to about the 90% stage for submission of our loan commitment application to the SRF program in October. That is a hard deadline that we have to hit. That's with every project, frankly. Then we expect to go out to bid for the project in the winter of this year, so the winter of 23 into 24, and are expecting sewer construction to start in the spring of 2024. Little note, we are told that the anticipated Park City Wind construction commencing of the duct bank work would be in the fall of 24. And so we're trying to start the sewer construction in advance. As we had talked about, the deepest utility has to go first. And we're expecting the sewer construction to be completed in the spring of 2026. That's not in each particular location. That would be the whole project, the whole 5 miles. All right, so project contacts. As you all know me at this point, I'm Griffin Bowden, the town engineer. There's my information. My cards are over there on either side at the sign-in sheets. We did have sign-in sheets. I didn't mention that at the beginning. If you're interested in getting emails of project updates, please, I encourage you to add your name to the list. We'll develop a project list. We are going to open a public comment period on anything that you heard about today. In addition, this public comment period will run through the meeting that we have scheduled on April 4th about the Main Street corridor improvements. So that's going to be open through April 30th, and you can email Kelly and submit that public comment, and her email's there, and her cards are on either side as well. And we'll have a website set up that you can review project materials as we continue with the design of this project. So with that, now it's your turn to talk. I'll take any questions. We're going to go around, have Kelly come around with a mic. Please state your name before you answer, and that's just because we're being recorded. Yes.
Start over here.
Jeffs, and my question is, what are they going to do when they come to the Centerville River?
Good question. I should have been clear on that. We're not crossing the river. So everything from the bridge south will be coming to the Craigville Beach pump station. Everything to the bridge north will be dealt north of the bridge. We're not going to be trying to cross a bridge with a sewer pipe.
My name is Rob Letterman. First of all, thank you. A boatload of information, and we're all I'm sure we're all trying to process it. Just let me get a grip on it.
Yep.
We're going to go from Covell's Beach.
Yep.
Okay. All the way down Craigville Beach Road.
That's correct.
Up
Craigville Beach Road, technically,
to
cross
Four
the Four
Corners,
Seasons intersection.
to Four Corners.
Yep.
Then we're going to proceed across by downtown, the village.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we get to the triangle,
That's right.
Are we going down Main Street
We're
towards
going
Finney's?
both left and right.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're going, the Park City Wind route would continue left up Old Stage.
Correct.
And cross 28 and then take the right up onto Shoot Flying Hill Road.
Okay.
The sewer will also continue up Main Street.
So Main
towards
Street
Mother's
where
Park, and that's
it changes to Finney's.
Correct, and that's
Okay.
just sewer in that location, yeah.
And that's going to be in fiscal year '24?
That's when construction will, yes, construction scheduled to start in the spring.
So
of
my last question, I'll be done with it.
Yep.
Is I live on where do I live? On Joyce End Road. So we're right there at the
Yeah.
base of
Yeah.
Mother's Park.
Yeah.
Are they going to be going up to our homes at that point, or no?
So not as part of this project.
Okay.
Your road is part of the Long Pond project that I talked about, which is so similar to what we're doing on Strawberry Hill Road and Finney's Lane right now. We're putting the pipes in the main roads right now, and then we'll be coming into the neighborhoods at a later date. So the people that are on Joyce Ann but have frontage on Main Street, for instance, will be able to connect. But if you're further up the road, you wouldn't at this time.
You say connect. Is there actually going to be able to be connected? I mean, is it going to go to?
Yes.
To the, oh, really?
Yes.
When are we crossing 28 from?
As part of this project.
Okay.
Yes.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Chuck Tuttle, longtime Centerville resident. Thank you, Griffin, for doing this, and thanks to Nick Atzelis for putting this together. A couple questions. What is the diameter of the sewer pipe that's going down Finney's Lane? Those pipes look like they're 4 or 5 feet.
So, depends upon the stretch of Finney's Lane. On the northerly portion, they're 15 inches. And on the southerly portion, closest to the pump station, they're 2 foot in diameter, 24 inches.
Okay, but the project that's happening now on Finney's Lane
Yep.
with those big diameter pipes, 4 or 5 foot,
They're 2 foot diameter.
2 foot diameter. They look
Yes.
much larger than that.
Yes. Yep, they're 24-inch pipes. that are
Okay,
going
so that's what we should expect on Main Street Centerville?
Main Street Centerville will not be that big. It's going to be either 12 or 15 inch. We're in the sizing process right now
12 or 15 inch versus 3 feet,
versus 2 feet. Yeah.
versus 2 feet.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. So about half as big as what we're seeing on
So what you're
Finney's Lane.
seeing on the side of the road of Finney's?
Yes.
Those are the manholes. So in between, so you have the pipes, every 300 feet or at every bend in the sewer, we have to install a manhole, similar to like a drainage manhole or a catch basin. It's basically a structure that the pipes come into and go out of. And so those have to be installed every 300 feet or so, or at a change in direction. And those are vertical structures that go in, similar to a catch basin that would take your stormwater. It's just got a cover on it, and it wouldn't have an inlet. But the pipes will come in at the bottom of that and go out from the bottom of it.
Okay, so are the manholes going to be as big on Main Street
Yes.
Centerville? Where I'm going here, Griffin, is if you go down Finney's Lane right now, those machines look like they belong in Iraq. I mean, they are enormous.
They are.
Will we need to have the same large machines on Main Street in Centerville?
There will be similar size equipment. However, on the section of Finney's Lane you're talking about right now, they had to dig down 22 feet. So they had to bring in larger equipment than we expect in Main Street Centerville, but there will be comparable size equipment.
Okay. Next question. You mentioned a building at the junction of 28 and Finney's Lane,
Yes.
where that big pump station is happening now.
That's
What's
correct.
that building going to look like?
So I don't have it in this presentation, but I'm happy to send it to you directly.
Yeah.
And the information's on our website. We can get it back up on the website. We have a rendering, but it's effectively going to be a one-story building with cedar siding, shingled roof, some faux windows. It's designed to look like the character of the neighborhood. It's actually kind of modeled on the liquor store across the street loosely.
Okay,
Roughly.
good.
And the adjacent other businesses and residents. It's not going to look like, say, the one that's on West Main Street at Lincoln Road. It's not brick. It's going to have, cedar siding and really more of a Cape feel to it.
Really helpful, thank you. You mentioned redoing the intersection at Pine Street and where Main Street meets Finney's Lane at Mother's Park.
Yes.
And you mentioned that when you do that re-engineering, there will be a crosswalk from Mother's Park to the sidewalk on Main Street.
That's correct.
Can we please have a speed table at that crosswalk?
So what may actually happen, and this is something we're vetting right now, we may actually make this a three-way stop intersection, to be honest.
Excellent.
But absent that, that would be something that we would have conversations about at that time. We typically don't install raised crosswalks in immediate commercial centers, but it's something that we can certainly have a conversation at that time. But I actually expect this is probably going to be a three-way stop.
Okay, so that'll be the 5th crosswalk in the village of Centerville. Right now, there's 4. I count them every day.
Okay. I'll take
So
your
that
word
would be
for it,
number
but-
5. Hopefully, they'll all be raised. Thank you very much for doing this.
Yep. Here. Kelly's coming.
Oh, good evening. Dan Dry, Centerville. A couple of questions. On the pump stations, are they going to be tamper-proof?
Yes.
Okay, in other words, they'll have alarm systems?
They have lockable hatches and alarms and stuff like that, yeah.
Okay. Now, I was wondering on the coordination of this. Do you have like a clerk of the works kind of guy that once you guys reach your decisions,
Yep.
he oversees it all?
Yeah, so what we have a couple of layers, actually. So I'm the town engineer. I oversee all the engineering efforts for the town. We have a series of project managers that we assign to each project. So we'll have a project manager that'll be assigned to the actual construction, and he'll have a team of inspectors and engineers that work under him to help manage. In addition, we have Kelly, who is our communication outreach person for the DPW, and she's really everybody's go-to source for the first stop for information for this program.
Thank you.
Right behind you, Kelly.
I am Lenore Lyons. You mentioned hooking up to residences. What will be the homeowner's responsibility?
Right, so the homeowner will be responsible from the building to the town right away. So the front of your property, which will be 5 to 8 feet off of the edge of pavement, depending upon where your particular property is. So the town will put the sewer main under the roadway, and will leave a lateral to your property line, and then the homeowner will be responsible for hiring a contractor to connect from their house to that.
And will
Pipe.
will the town help us find those contractors? And
So
what
there's
is
an-
likely
there-
to be the cost of that?
So one thing I'm going to do here, I actually have a slide that kind of shows that. So this is what it looks like, right? So here's your house on the right side. Here's the sewer main that's under the roadway. What we install is we install the sewer main, and we install a 6-inch pipe that gets left at your property line, which is the edge of the public-owned right-of-way. The homeowner is responsible for basically from their building to this location to make the connection. That may involve starting from your plumbing inside and rerouting it. Doesn't always. What typically happens is you cut the pipe before it goes into your septic tank, and you reroute it and have it go to the street. So as far as the question about will we help find contractors, we have a list of approved contractors that's on the website for this type of work. There's 30 or so, I think the last time I looked. That's the list that you can work off of. And then the cost varies depending upon your piece of property. So if you're further away from the road and down a hill and might need a pump, that's going to cost more than if you're about 20 to 30 feet away from the road. The pipe comes out, your septic system's located in the front, and you really only have about 20 feet you have to go with the pipe. So that can vary, and I am not going to start throwing numbers out for that reason, but it's in the thousands.
Greg Valenti, Centerville. Following up on this lady's questions and your answers, there probably will be some homes that will need grinder pumps.
Yes.
Now, is that just going to be an extra cost to the homeowner? that
So
needs a
what
grinder
has been
pump?
done in the past, on past projects, and what we expect to happen through this program is the town will, as part of the project, pay for the first grinder pump and effectively give it to the resident's contractor, and then they have to pay the contractor to put it in, but they don't pay for the cost of the pump. Subsequent pumps and maintenance of those pumps has historically been on the homeowner at that point, though.
Okay. They will probably need an electrical contractor as well.
That's correct.
Okay, to run a new circuit to that pump. So that's, of course, on the residents.
Yep.
So going back to the sewer going down Main Street, what's the maximum depth of that trench?
Right now, for the section of Main Street we're talking about, right, the historic village section, we're looking at 10 to 15 feet, 15 feet being about the deepest, but for the most part, it's about 10 feet. It's actually we're able to design it relatively shallow for a gravity sewer system. We're not talking about 25-foot deep cuts like we are on Finney's Lane.
Okay, so when you do the laterals off that, you may be going down to a point where it will be, more than 15 feet.
Well, the laterals come from the main that we install and pitch towards the property, so
Right.
they get higher than the main. And so what we do is we install a lateral that comes off the main, run it at slope to the property, and actually a detail that we're now implementing is what we're calling a riser, which basically is a vertical pipe that goes straight up so that you can intercept it at any elevation you want. Whatever works best for the plumbing in your home, and you don't have to necessarily dig to the bottom of that pipe. You can put a connection into the pipe at 5 feet below where the bottom is, because that's what works to keep the gravity from your home to that location, and not necessarily have to dig all the way down.
Okay, one last question.
Yep.
Finally, there's been a lot of angst amongst the people in Centerville, in this historic district especially, about the possibility of tree damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think you will be required to consult with the tree warden of the town.
Absolutely.
And
Tree warden works for the DPW, so
I'm sorry.
tree warden works for the DPW, so I
Right.
talk to him regularly. Yeah.
So right next door, you can.
Yeah.
So, the issue here is, of course, the roots of the tree.
Yep.
And it just kind of makes more sense to me to run this deep trench down the middle of the street. But I realize you can't because of the Park City wind.
That's correct. So one of the things there is, in talking with the tree warden, typically when you have a tree that's in close proximity to the roadway, the roots actually, for the most part, majority of the roots grow under the road because they're looking for water and air, and that big impervious concrete, paved area is preventing water from getting to the roots. So generally what you see, and you'll see it out there if you walk the sidewalks, is the roots will come down and then they're going to turn back to the area where there is unpaved surfaces, and you actually see some of the sidewalks heaving where roots are coming up, and that's why you see those roots there. It's because they're trying to find air and trying to find water.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I'm Susan Rohrbach, and I live on Main Street in Centerville. I have two questions. Will we be required to connect to the sewer within a certain period of time?
That's the expectation at this point, but the time has not been set yet.
And number two, who is going to have the responsibility for replacing the trees that have to be taken down?
It would be, so it's going to depend upon who's really responsible for taking the trees down, right? But it will most likely be a joint effort between the town, and it'll certainly be a coordinated effort between the town and the wind developer if the wind developer happens.
Help you put reasonable sized trees in your budget.
Absolutely, and there's going to be additional conversations about this, and certainly the first of those is on the 4th, We want to hold the workshop to have that conversation and see what folks are interested in seeing after the infrastructure projects happen. And then that won't be the last conversation. We have to go back and do some design work and then have conversations about what the design work looks like and make sure that it's acceptable to the community. So it will not be the last conversation.
Thank you very much
Absolutely.
for all of this great information.
Absolutely.
No, go ahead.
I'm Molly Sproul. I also live on Main Street. I have a couple of logistics or safety questions.
Sure.
Every night, are those trenches filled?
They are, yeah.
Okay.
They're filled and they're left with gravel on the top. And then on Fridays, we generally pave, try to keep costs down by not paving every day. And when you have to pave every day, it reduces production. So we usually pave at the end of the week. So we have a nice paved temporary patch for the weekend and it stays stable if it rains or something like that.
And then my other question relates to all the equipment that, as every time I go down Finney's Lane, I try to imagine where that's going to be on Main Street
Yep.
during the off-construction hours.
Yep.
Will it be Linden, Bacon, and that whole neighborhood?
So we're going to need to find and designate locations where equipment can go. And we'll be having to write that into our specifications closely so that we can actually control that. But to your direct question, I don't know exactly where it will be. I expect it won't just be lining everywhere along Main Street. We're going to try to be strategic about that. We don't want to put it right next to a home that happens to be only 10, 15 feet off the road, right? We're going to come up with a plan that kind of addresses the community's needs there to the extent possible.
And just one more question.
We can't trailer it away every night. It's one thing
Yeah.
we can't do because of the size of the equipment. So it's going to need to be driven somewhere and stored overnight somewhere. And then the trench boxes will need to be placed somewhere at the end of the night in relative proximity to where the trench is. But that doesn't have to be right next to the trench.
And the next question relates to foundations and some sort of a pre-assessment of foundations and conditions, and then any post-effect?
Yeah, so we're working, I alluded to it earlier, we're working on developing a specification that'll be a requirement of the contract documents for the contractor to hire a third party to do pre-assessments, and what that's going to look like is still to be determined, but we're in the process of developing that. Certainly I hear that concern and have that concern myself.
So we will get as some sort of a contract as a resident along the route? In terms of that understanding?
No, what will happen is, most likely what will happen, again, we're still developing this, is that a inspectional company will be hired, and there will be the offer to any resident that lives within a certain area that we have to define to have a pre-survey of their foundation by a qualified individual, and then a post-survey so that we can see if there's been any impacts. That'll be an optional thing. And our contracts, the way contracts are written, the contractor is responsible for any damage that is caused by the contractor. So it's frankly in their best interest to document that too, because we need to understand the preconditions and the post-conditions to understand if there were impacts. So that's what we're envisioning, but we haven't written the spec up, but it's going to be something to that effect. And I know Park City Wind is in the process of writing up a similar requirement. It was part of their Cape Cod Commission filing that they had to do, and you can find that information.
I'm sorry, can I just add one comment to that?
Absolutely.
Hopefully, the post-construction inspections and will allow for some time so that it'll be later. It won't be immediately after.
That all needs to get worked out because it's ultimately dependent upon, is there just a sewer project happening? Or is there a sewer project followed by a duck bank project a couple weeks later? And then it's really hard to figure out who actually was the digging that may have caused a disruption, right? So we have to work that all out, but certainly acknowledge that there is a time element there that we need to factor in. Yep.
Joanne O'Connor, also on Main Street in Centerville. Park City Wind has indicated, and this is not etched in stone, that they will have mitigation funding for businesses in the area. Is that something that the town will be doing as well?
The town does not do that, no. But what we do is we offer outreach through our staff, and we do everything we can to provide signage that indicates that you're open, make sure that we provide avenues to get people to your business, and that's what we can do, but we cannot provide mitigation funding. We just can't do it as a community.
Jim Kelly, Holly Lane. Would you just clarify, you said that the sewer will be flowing in 2026? That's just the main trunk, right? And then it's the peripherals that'll be...
That's correct. So the infrastructure we install as part of this project will be active in 2026. And then additional connections will come into it over time, as I had kind of walked through in those couple of slides.
Yeah, good evening. John Ellis, my wife Susan, and I have lived on Main Street, Centerville, for many years. And our fear is our house. It's a pre-Civil War dwelling. Mm-hmm. Sits on massive granite slabs, 5 feet by 3 feet by 2 feet. And I'm very concerned, as are my neighbors, about disruption of this. Mm-hmm. I do have a communication from Mr. Santos, DPW, who said that he was working on something very similar to what you've been talking about, and I'm very happy to hear that. Yep. I had written a very long-winded email. Yes.
I appreciate the input. We're thinking of that as well, and I'm happy that folks are bringing it to the forefront. It's something that we absolutely should be doing.
Yeah, the thrust of my question is money.
Yep.
Pre-construction, hopefully by a structural engineer, post-construction, and as Susan said, a look-back period would be very, very helpful because this is going to happen overnight.
Yep.
And who is responsible for the digging? Who knows? Now, how is all this paid for? Is there going to be money if we discover there is one of these massive granite things slips?
So that's what I was just saying. The contractor is contractually required to address their liability coverage covers any impacts as a result of their work.
Okay.
So the town writes that into all contracts, the contracts we have right now too. If they cause damage to an adjacent home based upon their construction, whether it was neglect or not, frankly, they're ultimately responsible for, their insurance company is ultimately responsible for that.
How do you determine, though, which entity actually caused
Well, that's going to be the
damage?
tough nuance here, and that's why we are going to have pre and post. That's why we're talking about implementing the pre and post monitoring. And if there are two projects, right, if there's a sewer project and then the duct bank project, we're going to have to do a post monitoring before the duct bank work happens, and then they're going to have to do a pre, and we'll have to do a post, and there's just going to be there's going to have to be a number of monitoring so the fingers don't get pointed in the wrong direction to the extent possible.
Okay, and the homeowner is not expected to
Homeowner
pay
will
for
not
any of
be
this?
paying for that. No, it'll be an optional program. Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Martha Chaproot. I was wondering if during the project, and I think we've spoken about this at previous meetings, are you going to be addressing the crosswalks in their locations and safety and possibly handicapped accessible?
So that's the intent of the meeting on the 4th, is to start talking about those issues. So we really want to have a workshop with interested folks such as yourself, right, that talk about what you'd like to see for improvements along that corridor. If we're going to dig it up, let's try to replace it the right way, right? So yes, we're anticipating crosswalk improvements. At a minimum, the locations of them will be moved because they're not necessarily in the best locations, but there's other potential enhancements to crosswalks, enhancements to try to find ways to mitigate speed, enhancements to sidewalks, landscaping improvements. Do we talk about lighting? I don't know. You know, that's what the purpose of that conversation will be.
I know it's after the fact, but I was just wondering if the tree warden oversaw the trimming of the trees, which was...
He does. Yeah, he's required to. Any trees that are touched within the public right-of-way, he's required to inspect beforehand and authorize the work to make sure really that it's not going to kill it. And if it does kill it, then we have to take it down.
I was looking at it, and it seemed rather extreme.
Yeah.
The recent trimming.
Yes. But it's all coordinated through the tree warden. It has to be by law. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Bob Schulte from Centerville. Hi, Griffin.
Hey, Bob.
Thanks for your presentation. Lots of great information. My question is about the timing of the Main Street portion. And I understand it makes sense for now to be planning this in coordination with the proposed Park City Wind project. Should that project be delayed, not be approved, they don't go forward for whatever reason, what impact will that have on the timing of this project? Would you still anticipate starting in the fall of '24 regardless of Park City Wind?
At this point, that's what I'm anticipating. We've included it in our capital plan for this upcoming year, so the council will vote to appropriate funds or not in the upcoming budget cycle, and that really is our authorization to proceed. We're listed on the SRF intended use plan. That is that's financially advantageous for us to access those funds. And we're currently spending a lot of money on the design of this project, and so I'd really hate to see that wasted, right? Ultimately, we're going to need to do this project, and if we don't implement it now, we're going to have to come back and probably redesign portions of it because things will change. So we're already investing significant amounts of money in the design of it. We're leading up and spending a lot of time and resources on this project, and at this point, we expect to implement unless told otherwise.
Okay, so it sounds like you plan to go forward regardless of that project.
Correct.
The other question would be if, for some chance, the alternate route going down South Main Street was chosen for Park City Wind, would you alter your plans, or would you still go forward with the Main Street section of the sewer first?
We would alter our plans. But ultimately, Main Street's going to get sewered too. So ultimately, we are going to be sewering Main Street in phase 1 of the plan. That is part of the plan. So yes, we would need to make sure that we install the sewer along that route before they put the duct bank in, because there's real technical issues associated with trying to do it after they do. It's big, it's in the way. We don't want to ruin their infrastructure that they just spent a lot of money on and take on that liability. The big trenches that we have to dig make it challenging to put a sewer in afterwards. So we will definitely be looking to put that infrastructure in before whatever route they go down, but ultimately Main Street's in the plan, and it's in phase 1 of the plan.
Okay. And one follow-up question. If you did go down the alternate route, would that mean the Long Pond Association would be sewered sooner than Main Street?
It would mean that
Connected
it
sooner?
would mean that the main roads along the Park City Wind route would get sewer along the same timeline we're talking about for the project we just talked about, but into the neighborhoods probably wouldn't change.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Griffin, for your fine presentation, Chris Clark. And the town is lucky to have you as our town engineer. Will this fine presentation, PowerPoint presentation, be available on the website?
Absolutely. It'll be on the Barnstable Water Resources website, and thank you for that question, Counselor. meant to say that. But yes, it will be posted on the website probably tomorrow. And actually, this presentation will be on the website, too. That's why we're recording it. Any other questions? She's going to just hand you the mic, just so we can, because we're on camera.
Yeah, I live on Main Street, and they call me Rapin. My wife is O'Neill, but anyhow, I have a question that's not really related to Centerville.
Okay.
It's just curiosity question. Since you're an engineer, what happens if we have electricity blackout longer than 1 or 2 days? Would it shut off your pumping station? Can you explain about the generator?
So that's a great question. So we have standby generators that we install at almost all of our pump stations. Our standard is to install a generator. Sometimes we can't because of site conditions. But so what that is generally we use natural gas for our generators because we don't want to have big diesel tanks that would supply the standby generator. But those, because it's natural gas, as long as the natural gas system is still functioning, they can run as long as the power outage happens. The pump stations that don't have generators at them, we have two tow-behind generators at the water treatment plant. And effectively what happens when a power outage happens is we have a staff member that drives around town, plugs the tow-behind generator into the pump station, draws down the pump station and goes to the next one and just does that as long as a power outage happens. So we make sure that these things are still pumping and won't overflow.
So that means that you're telling me that with a long power outage, we still can use our
absolutely yes
bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're not talking about an absolutely catastrophic natural disaster in certain areas, and as long as we can physically get there, then yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Susan Ellis, Main Street. Yeah. A gentleman over there brought up the fact that you're not going to go down the middle of the road, and you mentioned the wind farm is on one side and the sewer's on the other. So, if the wind farm wasn't involved in that route, would you go in the middle?
Probably not at this point, for a couple of reasons. One, we're spending a lot of money on the design where it is. But two, if this wind project doesn't move forward, there's most likely going to be another one that looks at this corridor, and we're having that same conversation in the future. Or there needs to be other corridors. We try to maintain corridors under our roadways for future utilities. And so that would be a future utility that we're trying to consider. So we try not to clog up the center of the roadway to the extent possible. We do that sometimes with sewer. But in this case, we're probably going to keep it in one lane in any case.
It's too bad it couldn't go the middle. It would be better for the homes on either side.
Right. Ultimately, the trenches are fairly wide anyway, and you're really not going to see a noticeable difference in the edge of the trench, whether it's 4 to 5 feet closer to the center line than within the lane. Those lanes are only 10 to 11 feet wide, so shifting it over, it's really not going to be a noticeable difference from that perspective. Ultimately, you're going to see most of the road dug up when we're doing it, and then we're going to be backfilling it and putting it back together.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Sandy Soares. Once you get into the neighborhoods, there's no electrical stuff going in, so which side do you decide to put the...
That'll be based, so what we do when we start a project, and that's what the preliminary design phase is for, is we map all the roadways. So we go in, we survey them, and we get an understanding of where all the utilities are under the roadway. And depending upon where the existing utilities are, we site the infrastructure in such a way to minimize utility disruptions to the extent possible. We try to avoid digging up all the gas mains and all the water mains if we can, and utilize the corridor that might remain under the roadway to minimize impacts. Yes.
Craig Valenti again. Is the homeowner going to be required to remove their septic system structure?
So they'll be required to abandon it or remove it. There are a couple of options there. You can effectively fill in, or you can crush it in place, or you can actually take it out. But there is an abandonment permit for the health department that would have to happen.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, it would need to be pumped first, too. Yes, Ruth.
One of the things that I know has been discussed, which I think is another one of the intended benefits of this, could you talk for a couple of seconds about water main improvements? Because
Yep.
I think that's a great sidebar.
Absolutely. So as we're going through, particularly the neighborhood roads, a lot of those water mains that are in the neighborhood roads were put in when the road was built by the original developer who put in a subdivision, right? A lot of these subdivision roads were built in the 70s or earlier, and those water mains are kind of getting to the end of their useful life. So on a case-by-case basis, we're going to be looking at, does it make sense to upgrade that water main at that time? Couple of moving parts there. We have the Hyannis water system, which the town owns, and really the majority of the program's outside the Hyannis water system. So we have to work in coordination with ComWater to see if they have the funds available to make any improvements. In certain cases, we'll have to replace sections of pipe anyway, and we'll do that to make the sewer go in. But absolutely, there will be probably on a number of the roads water main improvements in order to improve pressure, water quality, or just replace failing infrastructure. So obviously money's a factor there. So we won't probably do every single one of them, and we don't technically own them, so the town can't technically pay for all of them unless we actually have to disrupt it for the sewer infrastructure to go in. So there's a lot of nuances there, but it's a great point. Thanks, Ruth. One thing that goes without saying, every road that we touch, we're going to be repaving at the end. If there's a gravel roadway, we'll have a conversation with the neighborhood about, do you want a gravel roadway going forward, or do you want it paved? But we do have budgeted in the program that every road that gets dug up for the sewers are going to be repaved, whether it's public or private. Any questions? All right.
There seems to be a lot of expense to the homeowner on this, and that's kind of an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Is the town going to help with assistance to the homeowners?
So the town has established, please take a step back. The town council has voted to approve a sewer assessment ordinance, which was voted to be capped at $10,000 for each particular property, up to $10,000 plus interest over time. So the actual cost of each particular property in the program is closer to probably 75,000 ultimately for the capital cost. So there already is a direct subsidy right there. Some communities just do 100% betterments to homeowners, and they cost recover everything that way. So there are financial programs in place to offset some of these costs. At a certain point, there are going to need to be other ones that get put into place. So there already is effectively subsidies of the capital piece. And then as far as the actual connection, as part of that sewer assessment ordinance, there were provisions put in that you can amortize your assessment over the course of 30 years. So it basically gets added to your tax bill over 30 years. You don't have to pay it right away. You can if you choose to. And then the connection cost, there are programs that exist, and there are other programs that potentially are being put into place for loans for that. Right now, the county program is the one that's out there, which I don't know what their rate is at the moment, but there's a relatively low rate that's actually helped through the SRF program because they get funds through actually from the feds through the state to help fund that program. So that's one of the programs that are out there to help folks that, some folks obviously will have a hard time getting a private loan. So this program is actually available for people that may be in that case or others.
I have a related question. If you sell your home before your 30-year lien is satisfied, do you need to pay off your loan upon sale of a house?
So you're asking the wrong person because I'm an engineer and I don't work in the tax department, but my understanding is it would get paid off during the transfer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Among the villagers in Centerville, there's a belief that there are tunnels that go under the road that connect one side to the other side that were used during the Civil War. What have you done to try to assess if they're there, and have you inspected any of the homes?
I have not gone into anybody's home, but what we have done is, working with Park City Wind, they did GPR of the whole ground penetrating radar and subsurface investigations of the whole route. And inspecting that data, there's nothing that suggests that those exist under the roadway.
Hi, Steve Scheibel. Just a follow-up question on crossing the Centerville River.
Yeah.
The force main at Craigville Beach will be pumping up.
It's going to pump in the other direction.
In the other
Yeah, it's going to eventually pump over to the pump station we're putting in at the intersection of Craigville Beach and Strawberry Hill Road. So we're going to pump from Craigville to there and then up to the existing collection system, so we won't be crossing it.
Just two follow-up questions, Griffin, Bob Schulte. On Sue's question just now, I may be mistaken, but it was my understanding at one of the presentations Avangrid gave about the GPRS study, one of the engineers had told some of the people that they had identified some unexplainable large vacant areas underneath the roadway. Like I said, it was discussed several people, so just maybe potential follow-up, just suggesting that.
I have followed up with them after that, after there were actually not that discussion, but the discussions that were had about the route selection, because I know this came up a lot when we were having those conversations, right? Everything I understand and my look at the data, there's nothing in the data that suggests that. There are areas, every time you do GPR, there are areas of uncertainty, but that's not necessarily suggesting there's a large tunnel there. That's just an area of uncertainty. And so there's nothing in the data that suggests that that's there. The data could be wrong, but that's the data that we have to work with, and there's nothing that suggests that that's the case.
Okay. And then my other follow-up was on Mr. Hurwitz's comment about the cost. I know the town has been trying to get the word out there. My wife and I, between Meals on Wheels and we're Barnstable neighbor-to-neighbor volunteers, we work a lot with senior citizens. And unfortunately, I think there is a perception by a lot of people in the town when they hear the $10,000 figure. People think that we've talked to people and they've said to us, oh, no, we don't have to pay any more than $10,000. People don't understand the difference between the $10,000 for the sewer just running past their house and the significant costs associated with connecting. I'm not making a comment on good or bad or what those are, but I think a very large percentage of the population is under the impression that $10,000 will be the extent of the cost they have when the sewer comes by and they have to connect. just a point that there needs to be some better messaging to the citizens of the town to understand what those costs, well, maybe not even what they will be, because I understand they will vary from property to property, but people need to understand there will be significant additional costs borne by the homeowners beyond the $10,000 assessment. I think a large part of our population does not understand or are not aware of that. So just something the town might want to do to save the phone calls and grief you're going to get from people.
Thanks, Bob. Any additional questions or comments? All right, everybody, thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it. Everybody drive safe. Hopefully the weather's not too bad out there right now.